Have you ever looked at a woman and felt a wave of hesitation crash over you, your mind racing, your heart pounding, while your mouth stays silent? Not because you didn't want to speak, but because you didn't know how to speak in a way that truly mattered. You're not alone. That feeling, the fear of being rejected, misunderstood, or ignored, lives in millions of men. But deep down, you're not just looking for a conversation. You're searching for something real. You want connection. You want to be seen, respected, and desired, not for a fake version of yourself, but for who you really are. And the truth is, you can have that, but it starts with something most men overlook: the way you speak, the way you carry your voice, your presence, your energy. That's where everything begins. This isn't about learning tricks. It's not about memorizing lines or acting like someone you're not. It's about awakening something deeper inside of you, something you've always had but maybe forgot how to use. There's a version of you that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. A version that walks into a room and doesn't chase attention because attention naturally moves toward him. A man who speaks not to impress, but to express. A man who knows that confidence doesn't come from being liked, but from knowing he can stand tall even if he's not. And that's what this is about. Helping you step into that version of yourself, the high-value man who doesn't try to be liked because he respects himself too much to perform. The man who women don't just listen to, they feel. Because when he speaks, there's something different. Something grounded, something powerful. He doesn't talk to get something, he speaks to give. Presence, honesty, connection. And that changes everything. Because let's face it, you're tired of playing games. You're tired of walking away from conversations, replaying every word in your head, wondering what you could have said better. You're tired of pretending to be relaxed while your mind is spinning with doubt. What if you didn't have to live that way anymore? What if every word you spoke came from a place of quiet confidence, not forced, not fake, just real? Imagine how different that would feel. Imagine walking away from every interaction knowing you showed up fully, not needing approval, just being you. That's what women are drawn to. That's what makes them lean in. And that's what this video will give you. So stay with me, because in the next few minutes you're going to learn how high-value men talk to women, not with arrogance, not with games, but with clarity, strength, and truth. And when you learn this, you'll stop chasing connection, because you'll start creating it, not just with women, but with yourself. It starts now, and it starts with your voice. High value has nothing to do with what's in your bank account or the brand on your shirt. It's not about flashy watches, fast cars, or the number of people who follow you. Those things are loud, but real power is quiet. Real value comes from within. It's the way you walk into a room and don't need to be noticed, because you already know who you are. It's the way you speak to someone, not to win them over, but to connect with them. You're not performing. You're not convincing. You're simply being. And that alone is magnetic. The man who radiates value isn't trying to be liked. He isn't chasing validation. He doesn't walk around wondering if he's good enough. He decides that he is. He understands that the most attractive thing about him isn't what he owns. It's what he believes about himself. It's how he carries his silence. It's how he handles pressure. It's the unshakable calm in his voice that says, "I've been through fire, and I didn't flinch." That's what people feel. That's what women are drawn to. Not perfection, but presence. Not effort, but essence. Every word you say carries a frequency. It either says, "I need something from you," or "I'm already full." When you speak from need, people pull away. When you speak from fullness, people lean in. That's the truth you've been missing. You don't need to become someone else. You need to return to who you were before the fear. Before you started believing you weren't enough. That man is still in you. He just got buried under noise, shame, pressure. It's time to dig him out. Women are not looking for someone who checks every box. They're looking for someone who makes them feel something real. And that starts with how you speak, not the words, but the energy behind them. Are you speaking to get approval, or are you speaking because you stand in your truth? Are you trying to impress, or are you inviting connection? That's the shift. That's the difference. And once you feel it, once you experience it, there's no going back. You become the man who isn't shaken by silence, who doesn't crumble under pressure, who doesn't try to prove because he's already convinced. Not by ego, but by certainty. That kind of energy transforms every conversation you have. You won't need to dominate a room to be remembered. You won't need to raise your voice to be heard, because value doesn't shout. It resonates. And when you speak from that place, you don't chase moments, you create them. This is the edge most men never develop. They keep reaching outside for worth, never realizing it was inside them all along. But now you know. And now that you know, there are no more excuses. Start talking like the man who knows his value. Because when you do, the world, including the women in it, will begin to listen. Not to your words, but to you. Confidence doesn't come from what you say. It comes from where you say it. You can memorize all the right words. You can speak with perfect timing. But if the foundation is shaky, everything collapses. Real confidence is still. It's not loud. It doesn't push. It doesn't rush. It breathes. It stands tall without needing applause. That kind of confidence doesn't enter a conversation looking to perform. It enters to connect. It's not fueled by the outcome. It's anchored in the moment. That's the kind of energy that makes people stop and listen. Not because you forced it, but because you didn't need to. When a high-value man speaks, there's no tension in his voice. He's not trying to prove anything. He's not trying to impress. He's calm because he knows who he is. He's calm because he's not afraid to be misunderstood. He's not afraid to be seen. And he's definitely not afraid to be silent. Because silence doesn't scare him. It grounds him. He knows that presence isn't about speaking more. It's about speaking from a deeper place. That kind of voice is rare. It's memorable. It leaves an impact long after the words are gone. You don't need to dominate a room to be respected. You don't need to be the funniest, the smartest, or the smoothest. What you need is to be rooted, grounded, sure of who you are. When you have that, your words carry weight. Your presence feels steady. You walk differently. You speak with less rush and more intention. You don't compete for space. You become the space. You don't chase attention. You create an atmosphere where people want to stay. And that's what women notice. Not the noise, but the energy behind the words. Not the flash, but the depth. Every time you choose stillness over desperation, you build power. Every time you speak from clarity instead of fear, you reclaim control. The more you stand in your truth, the less you need external validation. And here's the shift. When you stop needing approval, you start attracting it. When you stop performing, you start resonating. That's when conversations stop being stressful and start becoming magnetic. You're not acting anymore. You're being, fully, freely, unapologetically. And this isn't about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally clear. You feel everything, but you are ruled by nothing. You carry both strength and softness. You listen deeply, but you don't lose yourself. You care, but you never beg. That balance is powerful. That balance is rare. And it all shows up in your voice, in your pace, in your presence. That's what separates a high-value man from the rest. The transformation isn't in becoming someone new. It's in remembering what strength feels like, what calm feels like, what you feel like when you stop pretending. That's where your voice lives. That's where connection starts. Speak from that place, and you won't just be heard, you'll be remembered. When you truly know your worth, you stop chasing connection and start commanding it. You stop asking for space in people's lives and begin taking up space with quiet certainty. Your presence alone becomes a conversation. You don't need to speak first. You don't need to prove you belong. You just are, and that's enough. That inner knowing changes everything. It rewires the way you show up, the way you look at the world, the way you speak to a woman. Not with need, but with clarity. Not to win her over, but to meet her from a place of strength. Most men walk into interactions already behind, already doubting, already waiting to be chosen. They measure their value based on the response they get, and in that moment they give away all their power. But when you speak from grounded confidence, you're not waiting for permission to be valuable. You already are. And whether someone sees it or not doesn't change a thing. That unshakable self-belief removes the pressure. It frees you. It lets you be fully present, fully honest, and fully real. And when you're real, everything you say carries impact. The moment you drop the need to impress is the moment your words begin to matter. Because now you're not seeking approval, you're expressing truth. You're not trying to be perfect, you're being human. And that's what breaks through walls. That's what creates real connection. When a woman feels that you're not hiding, not performing, not reaching, just standing there in your authenticity, she feels safe. She feels intrigued. She feels you. That kind of interaction goes deeper than charm. It lingers. It builds trust. It opens doors. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to stop letting fear speak louder than your truth. Fear tells you to say what you think she wants to hear. Confidence tells you to say what you believe and let that be enough. Fear rushes to fill silence. Confidence lets the silence breathe. Fear hides behind jokes, games, and masks. Confidence shows up exactly as it is, with flaws, with emotion, with depth. And in that space, something powerful happens. Respect is born. Attraction is earned, not through effort, but through presence. When you show her that you don't need her to complete you, she becomes curious. When you speak like a man who is already whole, she listens differently. You become rare in a world full of noise. You become steady in a world addicted to performance. You become magnetic not because of what you say, but because of how you say it. Slow, grounded, real. That voice cuts through the surface and reaches something deeper. This is your edge, is your power. To speak without needing, to connect without grasping, to lead without forcing. When you own that, everything shifts. You become the man who doesn't hope to be chosen. You choose yourself first. And that changes how every woman sees you. Everything changes the moment you realize you don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You don't need to say all the right things, wear the right clothes, or have the smoothest approach. What you need is ownership. Ownership of who you are, of your energy, of your truth. The men who leave the deepest impact are not the ones who try the hardest. They're the ones who are most in tune with themselves. They're not chasing chemistry, they're bringing clarity. And that clarity makes them unforgettable. When you speak from a place of alignment, your words carry force. Not force that pushes, but force that pulls. You become undeniable because you're not trying to hide anything. You're not filtering yourself to fit. You're not calculating your every move. You're grounded in the moment, and that presence is rare. Most people are stuck in their heads, overthinking, second-guessing, overcompensating. But when you show up with your full, unedited self, you stand out without even trying. You don't have to prove your worth when you embody it. The most attractive man in the room isn't the loudest. He's the one most in control of his state, the one who knows how to stay rooted when everything around him is spinning. He doesn't let external responses shake his internal truth. He knows who he is, so he's not looking to others to define him. That calm is magnetic. That calm communicates something stronger than words ever could. It says, I'm not afraid to be seen. I'm not afraid to be real. And that's what women feel. More than your words, they feel your alignment. If you're nervous but honest, they'll feel that truth and respect it. If you're pretending, even with a smile on your face, they'll feel the tension and pull away. Authenticity is not about being flawless. It's about being present in your imperfection, owning it, standing in it, not apologizing for it. And when you live in that space, people respond to you differently. The room responds to you differently. You stop fading into the background and start creating gravity. When you speak to a woman, you're not just exchanging words. You're showing her how you view yourself. Are you hiding behind charm, or are you standing in your honesty? Are you trying to win her over, or are you inviting her into your reality? The difference is subtle, but it's everything. One is fear in disguise. The other is strength revealed. And when you choose strength, when you speak from your truth, you become a mirror for what others crave. Realness, depth, certainty. That's how high-value men talk. Not to perform, not to impress, but to express. And what they express is more than confidence. It's inner alignment. It's emotional clarity. It's power without noise. Speak from that place and you won't need to chase connection. It will find you. Because people are drawn to those who no longer chase anything, but carry everything within. There is nothing more powerful than a man who is emotionally centered. A man who no longer fears rejection because he understands one truth. His worth is not negotiable. He doesn't hand it over for approval. He doesn't shrink himself for attention. He stands in it, fully, firmly, quietly. And that stillness becomes a force, a presence that speaks before any words are said. When you carry yourself like a man who is whole, women feel it. People feel it. You stop needing to impress because who you are already impresses. You don't need to constantly explain yourself when you're living in alignment. You don't need validation when you're no longer doubting your value. That's the mindset of a high-value man. He walks into the world with the awareness that nothing outside of him defines who he is. Not her reaction, not her attention, not even her interest. Because he knows what he brings, he knows what he's building. And most of all, he knows he's not for everyone, and that's exactly what makes him powerful. When you stop trying to fit in, you start standing out. Women are drawn to men who are emotionally disciplined, not cold, not detached, but steady, present. A man who doesn't react impulsively. a man who listens deeply, but doesn't lose himself trying to be liked. That kind of emotional control doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means understanding them, owning them, and channeling them with intent. That's what gives your words weight. That's what gives your presence depth. You no longer need to convince anyone of who you are. You just become it through your energy, your tone, your choices. When you speak from emotional groundedness, your words land differently. You're not throwing out lines hoping one sticks. You're speaking truthfully, without force. You're not afraid of silence. You're not rushing to fill the space. You know that presence is more powerful than performance. So you slow down. You stay connected. You breathe. And in that space, she feels it. She doesn't just hear what you say. She feels who you are. And that changes everything. There's a shift that happens when you begin to trust yourself more than you trust the outcome. When you stop chasing a result and start honoring your energy, every conversation becomes lighter. Every moment becomes more honest. You're no longer playing a part. You're living in your truth. And that truth is magnetic. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It draws in exactly what aligns with it and releases everything that doesn't. This is how high-value men move. They don't push for attention. They command it through presence. They don't try to be liked. They become unforgettable by being real. And the voice that flows from that space, calm, intentional, authentic, is a voice the world leans in to hear. Speak from that place. Live in that place. And you'll realize you never needed to do more. You just needed to be more of who you already are. The way you see yourself becomes the way others experience you. If you walk into a room unsure, hesitant, waiting to be validated, that energy speaks louder than your words. But when you walk in already validated, by your own self-awareness, your own discipline, your own inner peace, there is nothing to prove. And that energy is what instantly shifts how people respond to you. You're not trying to be chosen. You're not trying to be liked. You're simply there, fully grounded in your own value. That alone creates gravity. Not because you demand it, but because you've earned it. Women are not drawn to perfection. They're drawn to truth, to depth, to a man who knows who he is and does not stray from that, even when faced with doubt, rejection, or challenge. That kind of man doesn't react to every emotion or change his approach to match what he thinks she wants. He stays aligned. He knows that the right connection only happens when he shows up as himself, not a version he thinks might be accepted. That courage to stay honest is rare. It's raw, and it resonates. There's strength in emotional stillness, in not needing to explain, impress, or convince, in simply being present, fully listening, fully connected without losing your center. That's what creates respect. That's what builds attraction, not by trying, but by standing in truth. When you make eye contact, it's not searching, it's certain. When you speak, it's not loud, it's focused. You communicate that you are not here to be approved of. You're here to connect from a place of realness. And in a world full of masks, that kind of realness is electric. It's easy to forget that your energy teaches people how to treat you. If you move from insecurity, you invite disrespect. If you speak from neediness, you invite avoidance. But if you operate from self-respect, from internal strength, from calm certainty, you create a standard. You raise the level of every interaction. That's how high-value men lead conversations, with emotional authority, not control. With grounded openness, not desperation. They speak less, but they say more. Because every word reflects alignment, and alignment is rare. You don't need to guess what she wants to hear. You need to get clear on what you actually believe. You don't need a script. You need integrity. If you say what's true for you from a place of calm conviction, the right people will feel it instantly. The right women will be drawn to it without needing persuasion. Because they're not looking for perfection. They're looking for presence. For a man who sees, hears, and feels without folding under pressure. A man who makes her feel safe, not by trying to be something he's not, but by being fully who he is. That's the path. Not louder, not smoother, but realer. The deeper your honesty, the stronger your voice becomes. And when you speak from that place, every word is remembered. Not because you forced it, but because you meant it. There is nothing more compelling than a man who moves through life with quiet certainty, not arrogance, not ego, just deep self-trust. He's not seeking constant validation because he's already given it to himself. That kind of man doesn't chase attention, or he doesn't compete for approval. He stands still in a world that's always running, and that stillness becomes strength. It's not loud, it's not flashy, But it's undeniable. People feel it. Women feel it because it's rare. And the rarest thing in today's world is a man who doesn't need to be anything other than exactly who he is. When you speak from that place, you don't need pickup lines. You don't need strategies. You need presence. And presence comes from emotional discipline. It's the ability to stay grounded when your mind wants to race. It's the choice to respond instead of react. It's having enough clarity to stay calm even when you feel uncertain. That kind of control is magnetic. It builds trust without a single word. When you know who you are, you don't rush to prove it. You let your energy speak before your mouth ever opens. That's why women respond to men who hold their own. Not because they're the most aggressive or outspoken, but because they lead with intention. They're not moved by every impulse. They don't bend under pressure. They choose their words carefully, not to impress, but to connect. Their power is quiet but constant. And when they speak, people stop to listen. Not because they demand attention, but because they've earned it, through presence, through clarity, through consistency. Every time you speak from a place of honesty, you build inner strength. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you reinforce your value. That consistency is what defines a high-value man. He doesn't operate from emotional highs and lows. He's steady, focused. And because of that, he brings stability to every interaction. That's what creates safety. That's what builds real attraction. Women don't fall for words. They fall for the man behind the words, the one who backs them with character, with follow-through, with truth. Your tone matters more than your lines. Your eye contact matters more than your compliments. Your ability to stay rooted in who you are, even in moments of uncertainty, matters more than anything you say. Because it proves something deeper. It shows that you are whole, that you don't need her to validate you, fix you, or complete you. You are not reaching. You are offering. And that shift from need to abundance is what separates average from exceptional. You don't need to change who you are to be seen. You need to reveal more of who you've been hiding. Let go of the masks, let go of the noise. What's left is you, raw, real, and powerful. That's the man people remember. That's the man women respect. Not because he's perfect, but because he's true. And in a world that's starving for real, that truth becomes everything. If you want to be respected by others, you must first stop negotiating with your own self-worth. Stop questioning whether you're enough. Stop second-guessing your value based on how someone reacts to you. The moment you make your confidence conditional, you give your power away. A high-value man doesn't wait to be validated. He moves as though he already is. Not out of ego, but because he's done the work. He's built himself from the inside out, and because of that, he's no longer asking the world for permission to feel worthy. The way you carry yourself becomes your message. It speaks louder than charm, louder than compliments, louder than any carefully crafted sentence. When your energy says, I know who I am, you don't need to prove anything. That's the difference between presence and performance. One pulls people in naturally, the other constantly reaches and never feels enough. If you're always trying to impress, you're secretly admitting you're not impressed with yourself. And if you're not impressed with yourself, why would anyone else be? This is why inner work is non-negotiable. You can't fake alignment. You can't pretend to be whole. You either walk in truth or you walk in fear. And fear shows up in the way you talk, the way you move, the way you hesitate. Fear clouds your expression. It makes you overthink. It weakens your tone. But when you clean out that fear, when you strip away all the self-doubt, the need to be liked, the pressure to perform, what's left is clean, powerful, steady masculinity, not the kind that dominates, the kind that anchors, that calms, that leads without needing control. Women don't fall for men who try too hard to be liked. They fall for men who have nothing to hide, who don't flinch when seen fully, who can speak honestly and stand in that truth, even if it doesn't guarantee approval. That kind of man becomes unforgettable, because in a world of shallow masks, his depth is rare. His self-trust is felt. His presence speaks even in silence. And that's what creates lasting connection. Not performance, but presence. Not tactics, but truth. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need all the right lines. You need to be real. You need to own your words, own your silence, own your space. That ownership tells the world you're not waiting for acceptance. You've already accepted yourself. And that kind of energy can't be taught. It's earned through daily choices, daily discipline, daily commitment to becoming the man you say you are. Not for anyone else, for you. When you speak to a woman, let her meet the man who no longer needs to prove, the man who is clear, calm, and connected, the man who knows his path, even if she never walks it with him, because that man never lacks options, never needs to beg, never fears rejection. He just moves forward, unshaken, undivided, and fully in control of who he chooses to be. That's the man she remembers. That's the man she respects. Rejection means nothing to a man who doesn't reject himself. It doesn't sting the same when your worth isn't tied to someone else's response. It doesn't derail your confidence when your identity isn't built on approval. A high-value man never fears being turned down because he understands this truth deeply. Not everyone is meant to walk beside him, and that's a strength, not a loss. When you finally believe you are the prize, you stop handing your power to people who haven't earned access to you. You stop chasing validation and start choosing alignment. Confidence isn't about being the loudest in the room or the smoothest in conversation. It's about being anchored in who you are when nothing is guaranteed. It's how you carry yourself when no one's watching. It's the way you maintain your peace even when uncertainty walks in. Women are not drawn to men who always say the right thing. They're drawn to men who don't flinch when things get real. The ones who can hold the weight of a moment without losing themselves. That stability is what creates trust, and trust is the foundation of all genuine connection. If you keep shrinking every time a woman tests you, you will never be respected. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you refused to stand tall when it mattered. You folded instead of rising. You chased instead of choosing. A high-value man isn't rattled by someone else's emotional waves. He becomes the calm in the storm. And that doesn't come from pretending. It comes from doing the inner work, from building emotional structure so strong that nothing outside of you can collapse what's been built within. This is where many fail. They look for quick tricks to impress, fast hacks to win attention, but they ignore the root emotional discipline. The kind of discipline that keeps you grounded when you're tempted to react. The kind that lets you pause when your ego wants to prove something. The kind that gives you power, not over her, but over yourself. Because a man who can lead himself is the only one truly capable of leading in any relationship. Real attraction is built when a woman sees that you are not moved by fear, not swayed by pressure, and not desperate for outcome. You're not there to be accepted. You're there to be authentic. And from that place, you don't chase approval. You attract resonance. The kind of connection that isn't based on performance, but presence. Because you're not just looking to be liked, you're looking to be respected, admired, understood. And that only happens when you refuse to abandon yourself to gain someone else. Stand in who you are. Let her meet you there. If she can't, you walk, not out of bitterness, but from strength. Because you know who you are. And nothing is more powerful, more magnetic, or more rare than a man who's already chosen himself. Every time. Without hesitation, without compromise, without fear. Most men are stuck in one silent mistake. They confuse being agreeable with being attractive. They think saying yes, staying nice, and never disagreeing will win connection. But what it actually does is dilute presence. When you water down your truth to be liked, you don't gain admiration, you lose respect. Because women don't fall for men who disappear into politeness. They fall for men who stand in their values, who speak with clarity, and who aren't afraid to be firm when it matters. Being liked is shallow. Being respected is everything. A high-value man doesn't fear setting boundaries. He doesn't flinch at the thought of saying no, because he knows that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. They don't keep people out. They guide the right ones in. If you're afraid to lose her by expressing your standards, you've already lost yourself. And the moment you abandon your standards to secure someone else's comfort, you stop being grounded. You become reactive. You begin chasing peace instead of creating it. That's not strength. That's avoidance dressed up as connection. You were not designed to bend for approval. You were designed to build a life where the people who stay are those who align. That means sometimes you'll disappoint. Sometimes you'll be misunderstood. Sometimes you'll walk away from what you thought you wanted. But every time you stay true to yourself, you rise, you sharpen, you evolve, and evolution demands courage. Because standing firm in your values means you will be tested, and you must not fold. Not when your identity is on the line. A man with no boundaries will always be overextended. He will say yes when he means no. He will tolerate behavior that violates his standards And slowly, without realizing it, he'll begin to resent himself. Because deep down, he knows he gave himself away in small pieces, until nothing of substance was left. But the man who honors his boundaries lives differently. He doesn't wait to be respected. He teaches people how to treat him by how he treats himself. He doesn't need to demand it. His energy communicates it without a word. Boundaries are not harsh. They are clarity. They are leadership. They are proof that you know your value. And when a woman meets a man who sets them with calm confidence, she feels safer, not pushed away. She doesn't seek control. She sees direction. And direction is deeply attractive because it shows you are rooted, not just in what you want, but in what you refuse to allow. And that refusal is what creates magnetism. You're not available for disrespect. You're not open to emotional chaos. You are present, you are calm, and you are clear. Respect starts with self-respect. Love starts with self-honor. If you can't lead yourself with discipline, don't expect her to follow you with trust. Lead with strength, not submission. Speak with truth, not fear. Because the world doesn't need more agreeable men. It needs men who stand for something. Especially when it's hard, especially when it counts. If your words aren't backed by conviction, they fall flat. If your actions don't align with your values, they create confusion. A man of true worth doesn't speak to impress. He speaks to express what is real, what is grounded, and what is earned through inner clarity. Women aren't looking for empty charm. They're drawn to a voice that sounds like it knows itself. A voice that doesn't shake under pressure. A voice that doesn't need to be the loudest, but always carries weight. Not because it demands attention, but because it carries truth. A high-value man speaks with intention. He isn't in a rush to fill silence. He knows silence itself is powerful when it comes from confidence. When he talks, it's not to seek approval, it's to share clarity. His communication doesn't come from the need to be liked, it comes from the need to be understood. That shift changes everything. Because when you speak from truth, not performance, your presence does more than entertain. It earns trust. Trust is the currency of all deep attraction. Without it, there's nothing solid, nothing lasting. But trust isn't built on how perfectly you phrase things. It's built on congruence. If your words say one thing and your energy says another, people feel it, she feels it. That's why confidence isn't about talking more. It's about making every word mean something. And making sure your life reflects the meaning behind those words. Because when there's alignment, there's power. Not forceful power, quiet power, certain power, the kind that doesn't beg to be noticed. Too many men speak to seek validation. They try to be funny, agreeable, smooth. They talk too much or try too hard. And behind it all is fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being rejected, fear of being unseen. But when you let fear run your communication, you kill connection before it begins. Because fear is noisy, it overcompensates, it reaches. And reaching always signals lack. But when you're grounded in your own worth, you don't reach, you resonate. You speak, and your energy fills the space. You listen more than you talk. You don't interrupt to impress. You observe. You lead with calm presence, not performance. This is the shift that separates boys from men. Boys seek attention. Men offer depth. Boys react. Men respond. Boys chase approval. Men invite alignment. And that invitation is silent. It's embedded in how you show up. If you want to lead in conversation, lead first in how you think, how you feel, and how you hold yourself. Let every word be chosen. Let every pause be intentional. Let every conversation be an extension of the man you've already decided to become. When you can sit in silence with a woman and feel no need to entertain, when you can speak simply and let your energy carry the rest, that's when she knows she's in the presence of someone rare, someone real, someone unforgettable. Be that man. Real confidence isn't proven when everything goes right. It's revealed when things don't. When the moment feels uncertain, when emotions rise, when you don't know exactly what to say, what shows up in those moments is who you really are. And if you haven't built inner stillness, you'll try to fix the discomfort. You'll chase, you'll over-explain, you'll try to rescue connection instead of standing calmly inside of it. But a high-value man doesn't rush to fill gaps. He trusts his presence is enough. He lets tension breathe because he understands this truth. Comfort in discomfort is power. Women don't test men to be cruel. They do it to feel your foundation. They want to know, are you anchored? Do you collapse when challenged? Do you change shape when met with emotional pressure? Because how you respond to her resistance says everything about the weight of your character. If you flinch, chase, or try to convince, you lose presence. But if you remain steady, grounded in your truth, You communicate something deeper than words. You say, without speaking, I am not here to perform. I am here to connect, but I will not abandon myself to earn it. That energy shifts everything. When you hold your frame, not as an act, but as a reflection of who you are, you create emotional polarity. Polarity that invites her to soften because she feels safe, not manipulated. She feels your steadiness not as control, but as leadership. And leadership begins with your own nervous system. You can't lead a connection if you can't regulate your emotions. You can't hold space for her feelings if you're drowning in your own. So the work is not in learning clever lines. It's in mastering your presence. It's in building the emotional muscle to stay calm, clear, and open, even when it's hard. That calmness is what gives your words gravity. It's what makes your silence feel secure. And it's what tells her, without needing to say it, you are safe to be yourself with me, but I will always be myself too. That balance is rare, because most people collapse under the weight of emotional uncertainty. But the man who has done the inner work doesn't need everything to go perfectly. He doesn't fear rejection because he doesn't reject himself. And that kind of presence cannot be faked. It can't be copied. It has to be earned through experience, repetition, and the courage to face discomfort without needing to escape it. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs you to be real, solid. A man who doesn't flinch when things get messy, who doesn't apologize for having standards, who doesn't chase affection like a transaction. She's looking for a man who brings peace, not because he avoids conflict, but because he carries clarity. And clarity is magnetic. If you can hold your truth without needing permission, you become unforgettable. Not because of what you say, but because of who you are when everything gets quiet. Most men are trained to believe they have to prove their worth, that every interaction is a performance, that every moment is a test, that value is something to be earned through external approval. But a high-value man knows the truth. He doesn't prove, he reveals. He reveals who he is by how he carries himself, not by what he tries to convince others of. His value is not up for negotiation. It's not reactive to someone's opinion. It's already decided, already rooted. And when that kind of certainty walks into a room, it changes everything. You don't need to convince a woman to like you. You need to stop hiding behind the need for her to. Because when you chase her approval, you abandon yourself. You start filtering your truth, muting your instincts, reshaping your words just to be liked. But the moment you start performing, you break alignment. You drift away from your power. You move from connection into strategy, and strategy can never replace presence. A woman doesn't want to decode who you are. She wants to feel who you are, not through polished words, but through unshakable congruence between your energy, your values, and your behavior. When you're speaking to a woman from a place of lack, your energy is anxious, unsure, seeking. But when you speak from fullness, everything shifts. Your tone slows down, your posture grounds, your presence expands. You're not thinking of the next clever thing to say. You're listening, you're responding. You're creating a real moment instead of rehearsing a false one. Because the goal isn't to impress. The goal is to express. And self-expression only becomes powerful when it's free from fear. Fear makes men shrink. It tells you to avoid being too bold, too honest, too direct. It tells you to water down your truth just enough to avoid discomfort. But discomfort is where growth happens. Discomfort is the place where a high-value man leans in. He doesn't fear rejection because he understands that rejection is redirection. That not everyone will resonate with him, and that's not a threat. It's clarity. He would rather be fully himself and risk being misunderstood than be half himself and temporarily accepted. That's integrity. And integrity is magnetic. You don't need to be perfect to be respected. You need to be clear on your boundaries, clear on your intentions, clear on what you bring to the table. And when that clarity is lived, not just spoken, it builds a presence that speaks before you open your mouth. You don't chase chemistry. You allow compatibility to reveal itself. And if it doesn't, you don't panic. You stay calm. You remain rooted. Because your worth isn't dependent on the outcome. It's already established. And when you communicate from that place, where nothing is forced and nothing is begged for, you become the man women not only notice, but remember. Not for your lines, but for your truth. If your words don't align with your energy, they won't land. A man can speak confidently, but if his presence feels unstable, it creates dissonance. And people feel that even if they don't know how to explain it. A woman listens to more than your voice. She listens to your nervous system. She reads your pauses. She picks up on hesitation. She notices when you're overthinking. And if you're not anchored in who you are, your words become noise. No matter how well crafted they are, they can't hide a lack of embodiment. Presence can't be faked. It must be lived. To be magnetic, you must be honest first with yourself. What do you actually want? Are you speaking from truth or from fear of being alone? Are you setting standards or just hoping to be chosen? If your intention is approval, you've already given your power away. But when your intention is truth, everything becomes easier. Conversations don't become negotiations. They become filters. You stop seeking permission. You start expressing direction. And that shift is what separates a man who leads his life from one who waits to be validated by it. Attraction deepens when a woman senses clarity. Not the loud, performative kind that tries to dominate, but the quiet strength that doesn't waver. That calm certainty that says, I know who I am, and I'm not afraid to walk alone if this isn't aligned. That energy invites trust. It communicates emotional safety. And emotional safety isn't about never being intense. It's about being consistent. When a man is consistent in his tone, his values, and his standards, it builds a level of respect that no charm can replace. Women aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to congruence. A man who knows himself is more attractive than a man who knows all the right things to say. Because she's not only listening to your words, she's feeling who you become while speaking them. Do you tense up? Do you fold? Or do you remain calm, direct, grounded? That's the difference between trying to impress and choosing to lead. Leadership in communication isn't about dominance. It's about direction. It's about knowing what you stand for and expressing it with confidence and kindness. When you strip away the need to be liked, something powerful emerges: authenticity. And authenticity resonates deeper than any tactic ever will, because it invites her to be real too. You create a space where masks aren't needed, where honesty feels safe, where mutual respect replaces performance. That's the kind of connection most people crave but few ever experience. And it starts with you. It starts with choosing presence over performance. It starts with knowing you are enough without having to prove it. It starts with building a self so rooted in truth that your words become an extension of your being, not a strategy for approval, but a reflection of integrity. That's how high-value men talk. Not to impress, not to convince, but to express their truth, without fear and without apology. The moment you stop trying to be chosen is the moment you start to become the chooser. That shift in mindset changes how you carry yourself, how you speak, and how you're perceived. When your words come from a grounded place of inner clarity, they resonate with certainty. Not because you're trying to control the outcome, but because you're no longer afraid of it. A high-value man doesn't speak to gain favor. He speaks to express alignment. He understands that his energy is either an invitation or a warning, and he makes sure it always reflects his highest standards. You must realize that what you tolerate becomes what you attract. If you accept shallow conversations, you will be surrounded by them. If you avoid honesty, you will keep attracting people who fear truth. But when you raise the quality of your communication, everything else follows. A man who speaks with conviction but not ego sends a message. I'm clear on what I want, and I'm not afraid to walk away from what doesn't align. That kind of presence is felt instantly. It creates attraction rooted not in desperation, but in direction. You don't pull people in by pressure. You draw them in by clarity. There is immense power in calmness. When your voice is steady, your words slow, and your presence unfazed, it shows control, not over others, but over yourself. Emotional regulation is magnetic because it shows you are not ruled by the moment. You are not reactive. You are responsive. That makes women feel emotionally safe, and emotional safety is the true foundation of feminine trust. Without it, connection remains surface level. With it, trust deepens effortlessly. You cannot fake this. You build it by doing the work most men avoid, developing emotional strength, not just surface charm. Stop hiding your depth. The world told you vulnerability is weakness. But when it's paired with strength, it becomes irresistible. Speak your truth without flinching. State your intentions without apologizing. Honor your feelings without letting them control you. This is not about being soft, it's about being whole. A whole man doesn't fragment himself to fit someone's expectations. He integrates all parts of himself into one clear, congruent presence. That presence is what women are drawn to. Not the persona, not the image, but the man who is unapologetically real. When you learn to speak with clarity, calmness, and grounded truth, you unlock a kind of influence that doesn't need to be loud. It's quiet, yet undeniable. It's not about dominance, it's about certainty. Certainty in who you are. Certainty in what you will accept. Certainty in what you will walk away from. That certainty becomes your language, even when you're silent. And when you do speak, every word carries weight. Let go of the need to impress. Let go of the need to win. Focus instead on expressing your truth with courage. When you do that, the right woman will recognize it. Not because you convinced her, but because you became undeniable. You cannot master connection with others until you master connection with yourself. Every word you say, every pause you take, every breath between sentences, it all reflects the relationship you have with your own identity. If you speak from a place of needing validation, it will leak into your tone. If you communicate just to gain approval, it will rob you of presence. But when you speak from deep self-acceptance, you don't need to chase approval. You carry it within you. That's what makes your presence powerful without effort. Women don't just hear your words, they feel the source they come from. The most attractive energy is not neediness dressed up as charm. It's peace, it's purpose, it's presence that says, I am already enough. I welcome connection, but I don't require it to feel whole. That energy makes people lean in without you trying, because it's rare, because it's safe, because it feels real. When you drop the performance and lead with truth, you create space for depth. And the moment a woman feels that space, she relaxes, she opens.